Hello there. America has changed in ways that are hard to believe. Today, let's look back at then and now photos that bring the good old days back to life. East 57th Street was once lined almost entirely with private homes in 1911. Those residences have given way to office towers, stores, and commercial buildings over the years. Tunnel Rock in Sequoia National Park once allowed cars to drive beneath the massive granite formation. The road under the rock has since been removed, leaving only a walking path nearby. Downtown Welch in West Virginia was once lined with busy storefronts, a theater, and familiar local businesses. Much of that streetscape has disappeared, giving the town a very different appearance. Figueroa Street at Arroyo Seco Parkway in Los Angeles looked like an ordinary city street before 1941. It was later transformed into part of the 110 freeway, changing the area forever. West Side Cowboys once rode beside freight trains on 10th Avenue in Manhattan to warn pedestrians of danger. The street tracks are gone, leaving only the elevated rail line above. A trolley climbed Mount Tom in Holyoke, Massachusetts in 1915, carrying visitors to the popular summit. The rails are long gone, and the hillside has returned to nature. Fifth Avenue at East 34th Street was already one of Midtown Manhattan's busiest corners in the 1910s. The intersection remains just as busy, now surrounded by much taller buildings. Route 66 became America's most famous highway after opening in 1926, stretching from Chicago to Santa Monica. The original road is no longer continuous, but much of its legendary route can still be explored. This San Francisco house became famous after a streetcar crashed into it in 1936. Today, the home still stands after another vehicle crashed into it decades later. Michigan Central Railroad Depot in Detroit was once one of America's busiest train stations. After decades abandoned and covered in graffiti, the building has been restored and reopened. 7th Avenue in Chelsea was torn open in 1916 as crews dug the route for New York City's growing subway. Busy traffic now passes above the tunnels hidden beneath the street. The Jackson Street Bridge overlooks Chicago's busy South Branch in this 1916 photograph. The bridge remains in use, while the skyline beyond it has been completely transformed. The Pines in Fallsburg, New York, welcomed thousands of vacationers during the 1950s resort boom. Today, its once popular swimming pool sits abandoned and overgrown with vegetation. This San Francisco street was photographed in 1920 with early automobiles parked along the road. Today, modern cars fill the same view while many nearby buildings still remain. Madison Street Bridge carried people across the river after opening in 1911 as Chicago continued to grow. The bridge still serves the city, although the skyline around it has changed dramatically. Boston's elevated Central Artery once cut through the heart of the city with traffic overhead. The highway now runs underground, making space above for parks and wide public walkways. Lewisburg Square on Boston's Beacon Hill was already one of the city's most elegant neighborhoods in 1930. The square has changed very little and remains lined with historic townhouses. Fifth Avenue at East 93rd Street was lined with large billboards and private homes in 1911. Neither remains today, as the entire intersection has been reshaped by later development. People skated on Central Park's lake in 1890 with the Dakota Apartments in the background. Today, the park is still one of New York City's favorite places to spend the day. This Detroit building was once part of the city's busy industrial landscape during its manufacturing peak. It now stands abandoned, with broken windows and years of decay taking their toll. Grand Street and East Broadway in Manhattan's Lower East Side was lined with neighborhood shops during the 1970s. The buildings remain, but the old businesses have been replaced and the skyline has changed. Eastwick Avenue in Philadelphia was once lined with homes, businesses, and trolley tracks in 1927. Hundreds of buildings were later demolished, and much of the land has since returned to nature. Workers built the elevated IRT Flushing Line above Queens Boulevard in 1915 as New York's subway expanded. The trains still run overhead, while the streets below look completely different. Playhouse Square in Cleveland, Ohio was packed with grand theaters and moviegoers in 1928. Today, the same streets are once again filled with people heading to shows and concerts. The Curacanti Needle rose above the railroad in Colorado's Black Canyon for generations. The towering rock remains unchanged, but the tracks below have long since disappeared. This Detroit factory was once filled with workers and machinery during the city's industrial peak. Years of neglect have left the building in ruins, with much of it falling apart. A dramatic car crash in Brooklyn was captured on camera in 1941, offering a rare look at the city's streets. The same location is now surrounded by modern buildings and steady traffic. Two women posed on their 1947 Chevrolet outside a local diner, creating a family memory that lasted for decades. 63 years later, they returned with the same car for another photo. Honolulu, Hawaii was a quiet seaside town in the late 19th century, before trade helped it grow. Today, the waterfront looks very different, though the mountains remain the same. Detroit's George Jerome House stood proudly on Millionaire's Row after it was built in 1877. The mansion was demolished decades ago, and the neighborhood has changed beyond recognition. The Porto Call gift shop welcomed visitors at 79 Commercial Street in Provincetown during the 1940s. The building remains, though it no longer operates as the souvenir shop it once was. Bathgate Avenue in the Bronx was packed with small shops and street vendors during the winter of 1936. Most of those businesses are gone, and the street feels very different today. This racetrack in Charlotte, North Carolina, once echoed with roaring engines and packed grandstands. Years after closing, the track sits abandoned as trees and weeds slowly take over. The Hollywood sign originally read Hollywoodland when it was built in 1923 to advertise new homes. Today, the shortened sign still overlooks Los Angeles from the same hillside. The corner of 49th Street and 3rd Avenue in New York bustled with shops and pedestrians in 1940. Many of those businesses are gone, giving the intersection a different look today. This Ford Motor Company building once played a role in Detroit's booming auto industry. The factory has since been demolished, leaving only old photographs to remember it. St. Albertus Church became the heart of Detroit's Polish community after opening in 1885. Its damaged steeple was removed, and a neighboring building was replaced after a fire. Lewis Cook posed with his Stanley steamer on Broad Boulevard around 1910 with a doll named Betsy Bobet fixed to the front. The same street is now filled with modern cars instead. Ellis Island's main hall welcomed millions of immigrants arriving in America to begin new lives. The Grand Hall still stands, now serving as a reminder of those unforgettable first steps. Hollywood High School welcomed generations of students in this 1941 view from Los Angeles. The campus still stands today, with many of its historic buildings remaining much the same. West Main Street in Kent, Ohio, was lined with brick storefronts before 1910 and served as the town's center. Today, many of those same buildings still give the street its old familiar look. A massive fire tore through this New Bedford, Massachusetts building in 1965 as firefighters battled the flames. The original structure is gone, leaving little to remind visitors of the disaster. Santiam Wagon Road in Oregon carried settlers across the Cascades from the 1860s through the 1930s. Today, parts of the old route can still be followed through the surrounding forests. The Vanden Boom Chair Factory in Quincy, Illinois, was a busy workplace in 1880 with a detailed brick exterior. The building still stands, but its old character has been replaced by a plain, modern look. Mount Rushmore looked very different in the 1930s, as George Washington's face slowly emerged from the granite. Visitors now see the completed monument towering above the Black Hills. This Brush Park home in Detroit was once left empty and falling apart after years of neglect. It has since been carefully restored, bringing back much of its original Victorian charm. Abraham Lincoln left this Springfield, Illinois home in 1861 before departing for Washington as president. The house still stands, carefully maintained much as he would have known it. Manhattan Avenue at Norman Avenue in Brooklyn was lined with small neighborhood businesses during the 1920s. The intersection remains busy, though many of the original storefronts have changed. Downtown Salem, Virginia, looked much the same decades ago, with familiar storefronts lining its main streets. Many of those historic buildings still give the town its classic character. Amsterdam Avenue and 126th Street in Harlem was filled with local shops and everyday life in 1989. The intersection is still busy, though many of the old businesses have changed. Shepherd Glacier once stretched much farther across Alaska's rugged landscape than it does today. The ice has retreated dramatically, revealing bare rock where the glacier once stood. Plymouth Street in Brooklyn appeared in the 1992 film Scent of a Woman, with the Twin Towers in the distance. The towers are gone, and former warehouses have become modern spaces. Al Capone lived in this modest Chicago home during the late 1920s at the height of his criminal empire. The house still stands in the same neighborhood, looking much as it did then.